Tier 1. Cryonics. Cryonics is the low-temperature freezing and storage of a human corpse or severed head, with the speculative hope that resuscitation and restoration to full health may be possible in the far future. This isn't science fiction. Companies like the Alcor Life Extension Foundation have been doing this for decades. The process involves replacing the patient's blood with a cryoprotectant solution to prevent ice crystals from forming and damaging cell structures, a process called vitrification. The body is then cooled to the temperature of liquid nitrogen, around -196 degrees Celsius, and stored in a large dewar, waiting for a future where technology might be able to repair the damage caused by the original disease, the aging process, and the freezing process itself. Of course, it's incredibly controversial. Mainstream science is highly skeptical, viewing it as unproven and highlighting the immense cellular damage that occurs. Ethically, it raises questions about personal identity and the rights of a reanimated person. It's a huge gamble on a future that may never come, but for some, it's the only option they feel they have. It's a wild concept, placing a bet on a scientific breakthrough centuries from now. Brian Johnson. Brian Johnson is a multi-millionaire tech entrepreneur who has become one of the most public and extreme figures in the modern pursuit of longevity. He is the founder of Project Blueprint, a Hachiko anti-aging protocol where he has subjected his body to an incredibly rigorous, data-driven regimen. He employs a team of over 30 doctors and medical experts who monitor virtually every one of his biological functions. His daily routine is meticulously controlled, involving a specific vegan diet of blended foods, a precise exercise regimen, a strict sleep schedule, and over 100 supplements a day. The goal is to reverse his biological age, and according to his own data, he claims to have slowed his pace of aging significantly. Johnson's approach is a form of extreme biohacking, treating the human body like a machine that can be optimized. While his dedication is, in a way, admirable, it's also highly controversial. Critics point out that his lifestyle is completely inaccessible to the average person, costing millions of dollars a year, and raises questions about whether such an obsessively controlled existence is even desirable. He is essentially a human guinea pig for the limits of modern anti-aging science, religion, and afterlife concepts for most of human history. The primary path to immortality wasn't biological but spiritual. Nearly every religion and culture around the world has developed concepts of an afterlife, a continuation of consciousness, or spirit, after the death of the physical body. These are the most widespread and enduring forms of immortality belief. In Abrahamic religions like Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, this often takes the form of a soul ascending to a heaven or paradise, or being condemned to a hell, pending a final judgment. In Eastern religions like Hinduism and Buddhism, the concept of reincarnation, or samsara, is central. The soul is reborn into a new body, continuing a cycle of life, death, and rebirth until it achieves enlightenment, or moksha, and is liberated from the cycle. Ancient Egyptians had an elaborate vision of the afterlife in the field of reeds, while Norse warriors hoped to reach Valhalla. These beliefs offer profound comfort and a framework for morality, promising that life has meaning beyond our mortal years and that our existence doesn't just end. While they don't offer physical immortality, they promise an eternal continuation of the self, which has been humanity's dominant answer to death for millennia. Fountain of Youth. The Fountain of Youth is one of the most iconic myths in the quest for immortality. It's a legendary spring that supposedly restores the youth of anyone who drinks or bathes in its waters. Stories of such a magical place have existed for thousands of years, appearing in the writings of Herodotus, the Alexander Romance, and the tales of Prester John. The most famous story associated with it is that of the Spanish explorer Juan Ponce de Leon in the early 16th century. He supposedly searched for the Fountain of Youth in what is now Florida, while historical records suggest his primary motivation was gold and territorial expansion for the Spanish crown. The legend of his quest for the fountain has become inseparable from his name. The Fountain of Youth represents a very specific kind of immortality, not just eternal life, but eternal youth. It speaks to the human fear of not just death, but of aging, decay, and the loss of vitality. It's a powerful symbol of a quick fix, a magical solution to one of life's most fundamental problems, and it continues to capture the imagination as a metaphor for the anti-aging technologies we seek today. Transhumanism is a philosophical and intellectual movement that advocates for using science and technology to overcome fundamental human limitations, including disease, suffering, and ultimately, death itself. It's a very broad umbrella that covers many of the other entries on this iceberg. Transhumanists believe that we can and should use technologies like genetic engineering, nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, and brain-computer interfaces to guide our own evolution and become posthuman beings with capabilities far beyond what is currently possible for humans. The ultimate goals for many transhumanists are super longevity or even digital immortality, where a mind could be uploaded to a computer. Proponents like Ray Kurzweil and Nick Bostrom argue that this is the natural next step for humanity. However, the movement is also met with significant criticism. Ethicists worry about the potential for creating a tutored society of enhanced and unenhanced individuals, the loss of what it means to be human, and the unforeseen existential risks of creating superintelligent AI or other powerful technologies. It's a forward-looking, often controversial philosophy that is shaping the debate around our technological future. Philosopher's Stone. The Philosopher's Stone is a legendary alchemical substance, a central symbol in the Western alchemical tradition. It was said to be capable of two incredible feats: transmuting base metals like lead into precious metals like gold, a process called chrysopoia, and yielding the elixir of life, a potion that, when consumed, would grant the drinker eternal life and youth. The pursuit of the Philosopher's Stone was the magnum opus, the great work for countless alchemists for centuries. Figures like Nicholas Flamel, a 14th century scribe, became legendary for supposedly discovering the stone and achieving immortality with his wife. Alchemy itself was a proto-science, a blend of chemistry, philosophy, and mysticism. While the chemical goals were never achieved, the pursuit of the stone was also seen as a spiritual metaphor, the process of purifying base metals into gold mirrored the alchemist's own journey of spiritual purification and enlightenment. The Philosopher's Stone represents a more mystical and magical approach to immortality, one tied to secret knowledge and the mastery of the fundamental laws of nature, and it remains a powerful symbol in literature and pop culture, most famously in the Harry Potter series. Neuralink. Neuralink is a neurotechnology company founded by Elon Musk, and it represents a very modern, high-tech approach to enhancing human capability, with long-term implications for longevity. The company's primary goal is to develop ultra-high bandwidth brain-computer interfaces, or BCIs. These are devices that would connect the human brain directly to computers. The initial stated applications are medical, helping people with paralysis to control devices with their thoughts, or restoring sight and hearing. However, the long-term vision, as Musk has often stated, is far more ambitious. It aims to create a symbiotic relationship between human intelligence and artificial intelligence, allowing us to merge with AI to keep pace with its rapid development. This has profound implications for immortality. A sufficiently advanced BCI could theoretically allow for the full backup of a person's mind, their memories, personality, and consciousness. This opens the door to the concept of mind uploading, or digital immortality, where your consciousness could outlive your biological body. While the technology is still in its very early stages, with recent human trials just beginning, Neuralink represents a concrete, well-funded attempt to build the hardware that might one day make science fiction concepts like digital consciousness a reality. Life extension supplements. The market for life extension supplements is a multi-billion-dollar industry, fueled by the desire for a simple, accessible way to slow down aging. These are over-the-counter pills and powders that claim to target the biological processes of aging. Some of the most popular and heavily researched supplements include nicotinamide mononucleotide, or NMN, and nicotinamide riboside, or NR, which are precursors to NAD+, a vital coenzyme that declines with age. Another famous one is resveratrol, a compound found in the skin of grapes, which was once heavily hyped for its potential to activate sirtuins, proteins linked to longevity. Other supplements, like metformin, a diabetes drug, and rapamycin, an immunosuppressant, are being studied for their potential off-label anti-aging effects. The issue with this entire field is that while many of these compounds have shown promising results in animal studies extending the lifespan of yeast, worms, and myster, evidence in humans is often weak, inconclusive, or non-existent. The industry is poorly regulated, and the marketing often outpaces the science. For every legitimate researcher, there are countless companies selling products with bold claims but little proof. It's a confusing landscape for consumers, but it shows how eager people are for any solution they can swallow. Vampires are one of the most enduring and popular mythological figures associated with immortality, but they represent a dark, predatory version of it. These are typically undead beings who subsist by feeding on the life essence, most commonly blood, of the living. This act grants them eternal life, but it's an existence defined by hunger and a separation from humanity. The modern vampire archetype was heavily shaped by Bram Stoker's 1897 novel, Dracula. But folklore about blood-drinking, revenant-like creatures exists in nearly every culture across the world. Unlike gods or those who find a magical elixir, the vampire's immortality is a curse. They are often depicted as being unable to withstand sunlight, having aversions to holy symbols, and being perpetually lonely, watching generations of mortals live and die. This makes the vampire a powerful literary device for exploring the psychological toll of living forever. Is immortality worth it if it means you must harm others to survive? What is the meaning of an endless life spent in darkness and isolation? Vampires force us to confront the potential downsides and moral costs of cheating death, making them a fascinating and chilling part of the immortality landscape. Biological immortality landscape. Biological immortality. This is a real, observable phenomenon in nature, and it's a key concept for scientists hoping to achieve it in humans. Biological immortality, also known as negligible senescence, is a state in which the rate of mortality from aging is stable or decreasing, thus decoupling it from chronological age. An organism that is biologically immortal can still die from injury, disease, or predation, but it doesn't die from old age. The most famous example is the jellyfish Toratopsis dohrnii, often called the immortal jellyfish, When faced with stress or old age, it can revert its cells back to their earliest form, a polyp, and essentially restart its life cycle. It's like a butterfly turning back into a caterpillar. Another example is the hydra, a small freshwater polyp that appears not to age at all due to its high capacity for cellular regeneration driven by stem cells. Studying these organisms provides a proof of concept that aging is not a fundamental, unavoidable law of biology. If some organisms have evolved ways to escape it, scientists wonder if we can learn their secrets and apply them to human biology, perhaps by targeting the genetic pathways that allow for their incredible regenerative capabilities. Legacy and memory. This is a form of symbolic immortality, and it's perhaps the most achievable for the average person. It's the idea that a person can live on after their physical death through their legacy, their impact on the world, the memories they leave in others, and the continuation of their work or family line. This concept is ancient. The Greek hero Achilles, in the Iliad, famously chose a short, glorious life that would grant him eternal fame over a long, uneventful, and forgotten one. Artists, writers, scientists, and leaders throughout history have been driven by the desire to create something that will outlast them. This could be a great work of art, a groundbreaking scientific discovery, a political movement, or simply the values and stories passed down through their children and grandchildren. In this view, immortality isn't about the persistence of an individual's consciousness, but about the enduring influence of their life. While it doesn't save the individual from the oblivion of death, it offers a sense of meaning and purpose, a way to contribute to the ongoing story of humanity. For many, this form of immortality is more profound and meaningful than the simple, indefinite continuation of a single life. Alright, now on to Tier 2, where things start to get a bit more scientific and specific. Starting off with caloric restriction. Caloric restriction is one of the most robust and well-studied interventions for extending lifespan in a wide range of species, from yeast and worms to mice and monkeys. The principle is simple: reducing average calorie intake by about 20 to 40% below normal without inducing malnutrition. In laboratory settings, this has been consistently shown to increase both mean and maximum lifespan and to delay the onset of age-related diseases like cancer and cardiovascular disease. The biological mechanisms are complex, but it's thought to work by inducing a protective state in the body. It reduces metabolic rate, decreases oxidative stress, improves insulin sensitivity, and triggers cellular processes like autophagy, which we'll cover later. The big question, of course, is whether it works for humans and if it's a practical strategy. The long-term calorie study in humans showed that even a more moderate 15% calorie restriction produced many of the same beneficial metabolic changes seen in animals. However, adhering to such a diet is incredibly difficult for most people, and potential side effects can include constant feelings of cold, loss of libido, and reduced bone density. It's a proven method in the lab, but its real-world application for humans remains a huge challenge. Digital immortality. Digital immortality, also known as mind uploading or whole brain emulation, is the hypothetical process of transferring a human consciousness from a biological brain to a digital substrate, like a computer or a network. If this were possible, a person's mind could exist indefinitely, free from the decay of a physical body. This is a staple of science fiction, seen in shows like Black Mirror, San Junipero, or the novel Altered Carbon. The theoretical process would involve mapping the entire neural structure of a brain, every neuron and every synaptic connection, the so-called connectome, and then simulating this structure in a powerful computer. The resulting simulation would, in theory, be a faithful replica of the original person's consciousness, with all their memories, personality, and self-awareness intact. The technical hurdles are, of course, astronomical. We currently lack the technology to scan a brain at the required resolution without destroying it, and we don't have nearly enough computational power to run such a complex simulation. Beyond the technical challenges lie profound philosophical questions. Would the digital copy truly be you, or just a perfect imitation? What would it be like to exist as a being of pure information? It's a fascinating and deeply unsettling concept. Immortality bus. The Immortality bus is a unique and somewhat bizarre chapter in the history of the transhumanist movement. In 2016, the author and transhumanist Zoltan Istvan ran for President of the United States as a candidate for the Transhumanist Party. His main campaign vehicle was a 40-foot bus, customized to look like a giant coffin. He drove this Immortality bus across the country on a tour to raise awareness about life extension, transhumanism, and the potential for science and technology to overcome death. The whole campaign was a piece of political theater designed to get media attention for his ideas. Istvan delivered a transhumanist Bill of Rights to the US Capitol, held rallies, and gave interviews about a future where aging is cured and humans merge with AI. The coffin shape of the bus was intentionally provocative, meant to confront people with the reality of death and argue that we should be fighting it with science rather than accepting it as inevitable. While his presidential campaign was never going to succeed in a traditional sense, the Immortality bus was a successful publicity stunt that introduced transhumanist ideas to a much wider audience in a very memorable, if eccentric, way. Telomerase activation. This entry gets deep into the cellular mechanics of aging. At the end of each of our chromosomes, we have protective caps called telomeres. You can think of them like the plastic tips on a shoelace. Every time a cell divides, a little bit of these telomeres gets worn away. Over time, they become so short that the cell can no longer divide safely and enters a state of senescence or dies. This telomere shortening is considered one of the key hallmarks of aging. Telomerase is an enzyme that acts as a kind of cellular mechanic, rebuilding and lengthening the telomeres. In most of our adult cells, telomerase is switched off. The idea then is that if we could reactivate telomerase, we could rewind the clock on our cells, allowing them to divide for longer and slowing down the aging process. The major, and I mean major, problem with this approach is cancer. One of the key things that makes cancer cells so dangerous is that they have figured out how to reactivate telomerase themselves. This allows them to achieve a form of biological immortality, dividing uncontrollably. So, while activating telomerase could be a powerful anti-aging tool, it's also like playing with fire. You risk giving cancerous or precancerous cells the key to unlimited growth. Parabiosis. Parabiosis is a surgical technique that sounds like something out of a mad scientist's laboratory, but it's a real and old experimental procedure. It involves surgically joining to living animals, usually mice, so that they share a single, connected circulatory system. Their blood, with all its hormones, proteins, and cells, flows between them. In the context of aging research, parabiosis has been used to join an old mouse to a young mouse. The results of these experiments were striking. The old mouse showed signs of rejuvenation across multiple tissues. Its muscles became stronger, its brain function improved, and it even got a glossier coat of fur. This led to the conclusion that something in the blood of the young mouse was having a regenerative effect on the old mouse. These experiments fueled a huge amount of interest and hype, leading directly to controversial human trials where older, stressy wealthy individuals paid for transfusions of blood plasma from young donors. The company Ambrosia famously charged thousands of dollars for this service before the FDA issued a warning against it. More recent research suggests it might not be the young factors in the blood that are so beneficial, but rather the dilution of old factors in the old blood that are harmful. Genetic engineering represents one of the most powerful and direct potential avenues for achieving radical life extension. This is the direct manipulation of an organism's DNA using biotechnology. With tools like CRISPR-Cas9, scientists now have the ability to edit genes with unprecedented precision. In the context of longevity, this could be used in several ways. Scientists could correct genetic mutations that predispose us to age-related diseases. They could target and alter genes that are known to regulate lifespan, like those in the insulin IGF-1 signaling pathway, which has been shown to control lifespan in many species. We could even borrow genes from long-lived animals, like the naked mole rat or the bowhead whale, to enhance our own cellular repair mechanisms and resistance to cancer. The potential is immense. We could theoretically rewrite our own biology to make our bodies more resilient to the damages of aging. However, the ethical implications are just as enormous. The line between therapy and enhancement is blurry, and the prospect of creating designer babies with edited genomes raises profound societal questions. Furthermore, making permanent changes to the human germline changes that would be passed down to all future generations carries a huge responsibility and unknown risks. Epigenetic clocks. This is a groundbreaking concept in aging research. For a long time, we only had chronological ages, the number of years since you were born, but we all know people who seem much younger or older than their years. Epigenetic clocks provide a way to measure biological age. The epigenome is a layer of chemical marks on our DNA that tells our genes when to switch on and off. As we age, the patterns of these marks, particularly a process called DNA methylation, change in predictable ways. Scientists like Steve Horvath realized they could create a clock by analyzing these methylation patterns at specific sites in the genome to calculate a person's biological age. With remarkable accuracy, these clocks are better predictors of health span and lifespan than chronological age. The profound implication is that if aging is at least partially driven by these epigenetic changes, then it might not be a one-way street. Unlike damage to the DNA sequence itself, epigenetic marks are potentially reversible. This has led to the idea of epigenetic reprogramming, which we'll get to further down, where the goal is not just to measure biological age, but to actively reset the clock back to a more youthful state. Biostasis. Biostasis is the broader scientific term for a state in which a living organism's life processes are temporarily suspended. It's a state of suspended animation where metabolism, decay, and all other biological activity are brought to a near complete halt. Cryonics, which we covered earlier, is a specific, currently practiced form of biostasis that uses extreme cold. However, biostasis could theoretically be achieved through other means. The goal is to preserve the biological structures of an organism, especially the brain, with such high fidelity that it can be repaired and revived by future medical technology. The key challenge is preventing damage during the preservation process. With freezing, the main enemy is ice crystal formation. With other hypothetical methods, the challenges might be different. The concept is often seen in nature in a limited form, like with tardigrades or water bears, which can enter a state of cryptobiosis to survive extreme conditions like dehydration, freezing, and even the vacuum of space. Biostasis is the ultimate emergency medical procedure, pause button on death. Buying time for a cure to be found, whether that's decades or centuries in the future. It hinges on the belief that future technology will be vastly more capable than our own. Immortality in mythology, long before science. Humanity explored the concept of physical immortality through its myths and led blue zones. Blue zones are specific regions of the world where people have an unusually high life expectancy and a large number of centenarians, people who live to be 100 or older. The concept was popularized by researcher Dan Buettner, who identified 5 original blue zones: Okinawa, Japan; Sardinia, Italy; Nicoya, Costa Rica; Icaria, Greece; and Loma Linda, California, which has a high concentration of Seventh-day Adventists. Researchers have studied these populations extensively to identify the lifestyle and environmental factors that contribute to their remarkable longevity. While each zone is unique, they found several common denominators. These include a predominantly plant-based diet, regular, natural physical activity like walking and gardening, a strong sense of purpose, and deep social and family connections. People in blue zones tend to live in tight-knit communities that support healthy behaviors and provide a social safety net for the elderly. What's interesting is that their longevity doesn't seem to come from a conscious, high-tech pursuit of anti-aging, but from a traditional way of life that naturally fosters health and well-being. They provide a powerful real-world model for what a long, healthy life can look like, emphasizing lifestyle over purely medical interventions. All right, now, on to Tier 3. The water is getting a bit murkier here, with more specific organizations, historical figures, and deeper scientific concepts, starting off with biogerontology. Biogerontology is the specific scientific field dedicated to studying the biological processes of aging. This is the academic foundation for much of the modern longevity movement. Unlike geriatrics, which is the branch of medicine focused on treating the diseases of old age, biogerontology aims to understand and intervene in the aging process itself. The central premise is that aging is not an immutable fact of life, but a biological process that can be understood, slowed, and potentially even reversed. Biogerontologists study everything from the molecular and cellular level, like telomere shortening, mitochondrial decay, and senescent cells, up to the level of whole organisms. They use model organisms like yeast, worms, flies, and mice to identify genes and pathways that regulate lifespan. The ultimate goal of the field is to increase health span, the period of life spent in good health, free from chronic disease and disability. They argue that by targeting the root cause, which is aging itself, we could prevent or delay a whole host of age-related diseases at once, rather than tackling them one by one. It's a fundamental shift in how we approach medicine and health. Methuselah Foundation. The Methuselah Foundation is a non-profit organization that plays a significant role in funding and promoting longevity research. It was co-founded in 2003 by the high-profile biogerontologist Aubrey de Grey and David Goebel. The foundation is named after Methuselah, the biblical patriarch who is said to have lived to be 969 years old. Its mission is to make 90 the new 50 by 2030. They do this by supporting early-stage research and companies in the field of regenerative medicine. One of their most famous initiatives was the Emprise, or Methuselah Mouse Prize, which offered financial rewards to research teams who could achieve record-breaking extensions of lifespan in mice. This was designed to incentivize and publicize the field. The foundation operates on the idea that aging is a problem that can be solved with sufficient funding and a targeted, engineering-style approach. They've been instrumental in creating and funding new ventures, including Organovo, a 3D bioprinting company. They are a key part of the ecosystem that is trying to accelerate the translation of laboratory discoveries into real-world therapies that can extend healthy human life. Sirtuins. Sirtuins are a family of 7 proteins found in mammals that have gained a lot of attention in the world of aging research. They are enzymes that play a crucial role in regulating cellular health. They are involved in a wide range of biological processes, including DNA repair, inflammation, metabolism, and circadian rhythms. Think of them as high-level managers within the cell, helping it respond to stress and maintain balance or homeostasis. Sirtuins are dependent on the coenzyme NAD, which we know declines with age. The theory is that this decline in NAD leads to reduced sirtuin activity, which in turn contributes to the aging process. This is why supplements that boost NAD+ levels, like NMN, are so popular. The initial excitement around sirtuins was massive, especially when it was suggested that resveratrol, the compound from red wine, could activate them and mimic the life-extending effects of caloric restriction. While some of that initial hype has been tempered and the role of resveratrol is more debated now, sirtuins remain a key area of focus for developing anti-aging drugs. They represent a critical control node in the cell that could potentially be targeted to promote a longer, healthier life. SENS Research Foundation. The SENS Research Foundation is another organization co-founded by Aubrey de Grey, and it champions a very specific and influential approach to tackling aging. SENS stands for Strategies for Engineered Negligible Senescence. The core idea is to treat the human body like a classic car. Over time, it accumulates various types of damage, or rust. If you can periodically repair this damage, the car can run indefinitely. The SENS framework categorizes all the damage of aging into 7 distinct types. These include things like cell loss, the accumulation of senescent cells, mitochondrial mutations, and waste products building up inside and outside of cells. For each of these 7 categories, the Foundation proposes a specific therapeutic strategy. For example, for cell loss, the answer is stem cell therapy. For senescent cells, the answer is senolytics. This divide and conquer approach is very appealing because it breaks down the incredibly complex problem of aging into a set of manageable engineering challenges. The SENS Research Foundation funds research projects at universities and startups that are aimed at developing these specific repair therapies. It's a very proactive and optimistic vision for the future of medicine. Fasting and autophagy. Fasting, the voluntary abstention from food for a period of time, has been practiced for millennia for spiritual and health reasons. But modern science is now uncovering the powerful cellular mechanisms behind its benefits. One of the key processes that fasting induces is autophagy. The word autophagy literally means self-eating, and that's a pretty good description of what it is. It's the body's natural, regulated process for cleaning out damaged or dysfunctional components within our cells. Think of it as cellular housekeeping or a recycling program. The cell identifies old, broken proteins, damaged mitochondria, and other cellular junk, engulfs it in a membrane, and then breaks it down into reusable building blocks. This process is essential for maintaining cellular health and preventing the buildup of toxic materials that contribute to aging and disease. Fasting, by putting the body in a state of nutrient deprivation, is one of the most potent known activators of autophagy. By periodically triggering this deep cleaning process through practices like intermittent fasting or prolonged fasts, many believe you can slow down the aging process, improve metabolic health, and reduce the risk of neurodegenerative diseases. Qin Shi Huang's elixir. This is a classic historical tale of obsession and irony. Qin Shi Huang, who lived in the 3rd century BC, was the formidable first emperor of a unified China. He was a monumental figure, known for starting the Great War and for the terracotta army built to guard his tomb. But he was also consumed by a terror of death and became obsessed with finding the elixir of life. He sent his alchemists and ministers on massive expeditions in search of legendary places and people who held the secret to immortality, such as the mythical Penglai Mountain, where the 8 immortals were said to reside. His alchemists worked tirelessly to concoct potions that would grant him eternal life. The tragic irony is that many of these supposed elixirs were based on mercury, which was considered a powerful and life-giving substance in ancient Chinese alchemy. It is widely believed that the emperor regularly consumed mercury pills, and that he ultimately died from mercury poisoning at the age of 49. His relentless quest to cheat death not only failed, but likely hastened his own demise. It's one of history's most powerful cautionary tales about the dangers of unchecked obsession. The Wandering Jew. The Wandering Jew is a figure from medieval European folklore who represents immortality as a profound punishment. The legend has many variations, but the core story is this. As Jesus was carrying the cross to his crucifixion, he paused to rest. A Jewish man, sometimes named as Ahasverus, either struck him or taunted him, telling him to hurry up and go to his death. In response, Jesus cursed him, saying something to the effect of, "I am going, but you shall tarry until I come again." As a result, the man is doomed to live and wander the earth, never aging, never dying, until the second coming. He becomes a perpetual outsider, a witness to the endless cycle of human folly, war, and suffering, unable to find rest or peace. This story became very popular and was used in various literary works over the centuries. Unlike most figures on this iceberg, who actively seek immortality, the Wandering Jew has it thrust upon him as a divine curse. He embodies the potential for endless weariness, loneliness, and despair that could come with an eternal life, serving as a powerful myth about the spiritual and psychological weight of living forever. Epigenetic reprogramming. This concept takes the idea of epigenetic clocks a step further into truly mind-bending territory. If epigenetic clocks can measure biological age by reading the patterns on our DNA, then epigenetic reprogramming is the attempt to actively erase those patterns and reset the clock. The scientific breakthrough that made this seem possible came from Shinya Yamanaka, who discovered 4 specific proteins, now known as Yamanaka factors, that could take a normal adult cell and turn it back into an embryonic-like pluripotent stem cell. It's a full factory reset for a cell. More recently, researchers like David Sinclair have shown that by briefly turning on some of these factors in living animals, like mice, they can achieve incredible feats of rejuvenation without turning the cells fully cancerous. They have been able to restore lost vision in old mice by regenerating the optic nerve, and have shown other signs of age reversal in various tissues. This is at the absolute cutting edge of longevity science. The idea is that aging might be, in part, a loss of information, not in the DNA itself, but in the epigenetic instructions that read it. Reprogramming could be a way to restore that youthful information, effectively reversing the aging process. 9 Hallmarks of Aging. In 2013, a group of leading scientists published a paper that has become one of the most influential in the entire field of biogerontology. It was titled The Hallmarks of Aging. In this paper, they proposed a framework for understanding the aging process by breaking it down into 9 distinct but interconnected categories. These 9 hallmarks are genomic instability, attrition, epigenetic alterations, loss of proteostasis, the stability of proteins, deregulated nutrient sensing, mitochondrial dysfunction, cellular senescence, stem cell exhaustion, and altered intercellular communication. This framework was revolutionary because it provided a comprehensive map of what goes wrong in our bodies as we get older. It shifted the focus from treating individual age-related diseases to understanding the underlying processes that cause all of them. Each hallmark is a potential target for intervention. For example, senolytics target cellular senescence, and sirtuin activators target deregulated nutrient sensing. The 9 hallmarks have provided a common language and a strategic roadmap for researchers all over the world, guiding the development of the next generation of anti-aging therapies. It's a truly foundational concept for the entire field. Shangri-La is a fictional, idyllic place that has become synonymous with earthly paradise and longevity. It was introduced to the world in the 1933 novel Lost Horizon by James Hilton. In this story, Shangri-La is a hidden lamasery, a monastery, located high in the Kunlun Mountains of Tibet. It is a valley of breathtaking beauty, cut off from the rest of the world. The inhabitants of Shangri-La, guided by a mysterious High Lama, live in a state of peace, wisdom, and remarkable health due to the unique atmosphere of the valley and their contemplative lifestyle. Their aging process is slowed dramatically, allowing them to live for hundreds of years while retaining their vitality. Shangri-La is a utopian vision of immortality. Unlike many myths where eternal life is a curse, here it's a blessing, allowing for the accumulation of wisdom and the pursuit of enlightenment in a peaceful society. The story captured the imagination of a world grappling with war and depression, and Shangri-La entered our cultural vocabulary as a symbol of a lost paradise, a perfect place where the dream of a long, happy, and meaningful life is realized. Xenotransplantation is the transplantation of living cells, tissues, or organs from one species to another. For decades, it has been explored as a potential solution to the chronic shortage of human organs for transplantation. The most promising donor animals are pigs, as their organs are a similar size to humans and they can be bred in large numbers. The main challenge has always been hyperacute rejection. Our immune system immediately recognizes the pig organ as foreign and violently attacks it. However, with the advent of genetic engineering tools like CRISPR, scientists can now make multiple edits to the pig genome. They can humanize the pig organs by adding human genes and knock out pig genes that trigger the immune response. They can also edit out endogenous retroviruses within the pig DNA that could potentially infect a human recipient. Recently, we've seen the first successful transplants of genetically modified pig kidneys and hearts into human patients, although they have only survived for a short time. For longevity, the implications are clear. If we could create an unlimited supply of rejection-proof replacement organs, we could overcome one of the major modes of failure for the human body as it ages: organ failure. Blood plasma dilution. This is a fascinating and more recent twist on the older parabiosis and young blood transfusion ideas. For a while, The prevailing theory was that young blood contained specific pro-youthful factors that could rejuvenate an older system. This led to the hype around young plasma transfusions. However, research from the lab of Irina and Michael Comboy at UC Berkeley has suggested an alternative and perhaps more compelling hypothesis. Their work indicates that it might not be the presence of good stuff in young blood that matters, but the accumulation of bad, pro-aging factors in old blood that actively inhibit repair and regeneration. They conducted experiments where they didn't give old mice young blood, but simply performed a neutral blood exchange, removing some of the old mouse's blood plasma and replacing it with a simple solution of saline and albumin. This effectively diluted the concentration of those harmful pro-aging factors. The results were remarkable. The old mice showed signs of rejuvenation in their brain, liver, and muscles, similar to what was seen in parabiosis. This suggests a new therapeutic strategy. Instead of adding something good, maybe we just need to filter out or dilute the bad stuff that accumulates with age. Immortal cell line. An immortal cell line is a population of cells that has escaped normal cellular senescence and can divide indefinitely in a laboratory culture as long as they are given nutrients. They are, on a cellular level, biologically immortal. Most normal cells have a finite number of divisions, known as the half-life limit. Immortalized cells have found a way to bypass this limit, usually through mutations. The most famous and one of the first immortal human cell lines is the HeLa line. These cells were taken from the aggressive cervical cancer of a woman named Henrietta Lacks in 1951, without her consent. While she died shortly after, her cells lived on and have been one of the most important tools in medicine. They've been used to develop the polio vaccine, to study cancer and viruses, and were the first human cells to be cloned. Their story is also a landmark case in bioethics, raising critical questions about consent, race, and the commercialization of human biological materials. There are many other immortal cell lines now, mostly derived from cancers, and they are essential for biological and medical research around the world. Deathless Gilgamesh. The Epic of Gilgamesh, originating from ancient Mesopotamia, is one of the earliest surviving works of literature, and at its core, it is a profound meditation on mortality. Gilgamesh is the powerful king of Uruk, who is part god and part man. He is initially a tyrant, but his life is changed by his deep friendship with Enkidu, a wild man created by the gods. When Enkidu dies, Gilgamesh is shattered by grief and, for the first time, consumed by a terrifying fear of his own death. He abandons his kingdom and embarks on a desperate, arduous quest to find the secret of eternal life. His journey leads him to Utnapishtim, a man who survived the Great Flood and was granted immortality by the gods. Utnapishtim tests Gilgamesh, who ultimately fails to achieve his goal. He learns that death is an inescapable part of the human condition. He returns to his kingdom a wiser man, understanding that immortality is not found in eternal life, but in the great works one leaves behind and the life one lives. It's an ancient and powerful story that frames the entire quest for immortality, concluding that meaning is found not in avoiding death, but in accepting it. Nootropics and cognitive longevity. Nootropics, often called smart drugs or cognitive enhancers, are substances that are claimed to improve mental functions like memory, creativity, motivation, and focus. The market includes a wide range of products, from pharmaceuticals like modafinil and Adderall, to dietary supplements like Bacopa moneri, Ginkgo biloba, and various race stamps. While many people use them for short-term performance enhancement, A significant aspect of the nootropics community is focused on the long-term goal of cognitive longevity. This is the idea of maintaining a sharp, healthy, and high-functioning brain throughout one's entire lifespan. The fear is not just of dying, but of living for a long time while suffering from cognitive decline, dementia, or Alzheimer's disease. What good is a physically healthy 120-year-old body if the mind is gone? Cognitive longevity aims to extend health span specifically for the brain. This involves not only supplements, but also lifestyle factors like exercise, diet, sleep, and continuous learning. It represents a more holistic view of longevity, where the quality of our mental experience is just as important, if not more so, than the sheer quantity of years we live. Alright, now on to Tier 4. We're getting into some very strange history, obscure figures, and pretty out there concepts now. Let's start with Pope Innocent VIII. Pope Innocent VIII. This is a dark and gruesome story from the late 15th century, though its historical accuracy is highly debated by modern scholars. The story goes that in 1492, Pope Innocent VIII was on his deathbed, old and ailing, in a desperate, last-ditch effort to rejuvenate him. His physician allegedly proposed a radical and horrifying procedure, a blood transfusion, but this wasn't a modern, sterile for drip. The tale, chronicled by his contemporary Stefano in Visura, claims that blood was drawn from 3 healthy young boys, who were paid a ducat each. This blood was then supposedly given to the Pope to drink, in the belief that the vitality of the young blood would pass to him. The procedure was a catastrophic failure. According to the account, all 3 boys died from the blood loss, and the Pope died shortly after as well, with the procedure having done nothing to save him. Most serious historians today view this story as a fabrication, a piece of anti-papal propaganda spread by Infusura, who was a fierce critic of the Pope. Whether true or not, it has persisted as one of the earliest and most macabre tales of attempted rejuvenation, a chilling example of medical desperation. Elizabeth Bathory, Countess Elizabeth Bathory d'Axt, was a Hungarian noblewoman from the late 16th and early 17th centuries who has gone down in history as one of the most prolific female serial killers, earning her the nickname the Blood Countess. The historical accounts from her trial are horrific enough on their own. She was accused by numerous witnesses of torturing and murdering hundreds of young women and girls, both servants at her castle and daughters of the local gentry. She was eventually arrested and, due to her noble status, was not executed but walled up in a set of rooms in her own castle, where she remained until her death. The part of her legend that relates to this iceberg, however, likely emerged after her death. These later, more sensationalist stories claimed that the motive for her horrific crimes was vanity. The legend says she believed that bathing in the blood of virgin girls would preserve her own youth and beauty. There is no evidence from her actual trial that this was the case, but the image is so powerful and horrifying that it has become her defining legacy, cementing her in pop culture as a real-life monster who pursued eternal youth through the most evil means imaginable. Taoist principles, Taoism, an ancient Chinese philosophical and religious tradition, has a deep and complex relationship with the idea of longevity and immortality. It's not just a single concept, but a spectrum of practices and beliefs. At one end, you have Yang Sheng, or nurturing life, which involves practices like specific diets, herbal medicine, and exercises like Qigong and Tai Chi, all aimed at promoting health and a long life in a very practical sense. At the more esoteric end, you have Taoist alchemy, which is divided into 2 types: Weiden, or external alchemy, was the attempt to create a physical elixir of immortality using herbs and minerals, which is what Emperor Qin Shi Huang was after. This often involved dangerous substances like cinnabar and mercury. The more sophisticated school is Needon, or internal alchemy. This is a complex system of meditation, breathing techniques, and visualization. The goal of Needon is to transform the three fundamental energies of the body Jing essence, Qi vitality, and Shen spirit to create what is called an immortal fetus, or golden body within oneself, leading to spiritual transcendence and, for some practitioners, a form of physical immortality. Ambrosia and Amrita. Ambrosia and Amrita are two distinct but parallel concepts from Greek and Hindu mythology, respectively, both representing the divine substance that grants immortality. In Greek mythology, ambrosia is the food or drink of the Olympian gods. It was what gave them their immortality and was typically delivered to them by doves. Mortals who managed to consume it, like Heracles, could become immortal themselves. Tantalus was famously punished in the underworld for trying to steal ambrosia to give to humans. In Hindu mythology, Amrita is a divine nectar of immortality that was produced during the Samudra Manthan, or the churning of the ocean of milk. This was a colossal effort where the gods and the demons, the Asuras, worked together to churn the cosmic ocean to obtain various treasures, with Amrita being the ultimate prize. The story involves the god Vishnu tricking the demons out of their share of the nectar to ensure that only the gods became immortal. Both ambrosia and Amrita represent a common mythological theme. Immortality is a divine attribute, a precious and closely guarded substance that separates gods from mortals, and obtaining it is a feat of epic proportions. Li Qingyuan. Li Qingyuan is a figure whose story blurs the line between fact and legend, and he is often cited as a case of extreme human longevity. He was a Chinese herbalist, martial artist, and tactical advisor who supposedly died in 1933 at the age of 256. The story gained international attention when a professor from Chengdu University claimed to have found government records from the Chinese imperial government from 1827, congratulating Li Qingyuan on his 150th birthday, as well as other documents congratulating him on his 200th birthday in 1877. A 1933 New York Times article reported on his life and death, citing these claims. According to the tales, Li himself attributed his long life to a calm mind, specific breathing techniques, and the use of certain herbs like goji berries, wild ginseng, and he shou wu. While the story is incredibly intriguing, modern gerontologists and record keepers are universally skeptical. The documentation is unverifiable, and an age of 256 years is so far beyond the known limits of human lifespan that it is considered a biological impossibility. Nevertheless, his legend endures as an inspirational, if likely mythical, tale of extreme longevity achieved through a serene lifestyle and natural remedies. Calico Labs is an American research and development company that is one of the biggest and most mysterious players in the modern longevity space. Its name is an abbreviation of California Life Company. Calico was founded in 2013 by Google's parent company, Alphabet Inc., with the incredibly ambitious goal to harness advanced technologies to increase our understanding of the biology that controls lifespan. Essentially, they were given a massive, near-unlimited budget and a long-term timeline to try and solve aging. Unlike many startups in the field that need to produce results quickly, Calico has the freedom to pursue basic, fundamental research into the biology of aging. They are notoriously secretive about their work, publishing relatively few papers compared to the scale of their operation. However, they have hired some of the top scientists in the world, including Cynthia Kenyon, whose work on worms showed that a single gene mutation could double their lifespan. They are known to be studying long-lived species like the naked mole rat to uncover their secrets. The combination of immense funding, top-tier talent, and a long-term vision makes Calico a formidable force in the field, even if we don't know exactly what they are discovering behind closed doors. Adun's apples. In Norse mythology, the gods are not inherently immortal in the same way the Greek gods were. Their immortality and eternal youth are conditional, and they depend on a magical substance. The golden apples kept by the goddess Idun. She is the keeper of an eski, a wooden box, filled with these apples, and the gods must periodically eat them to ward off old age and remain young and vigorous. This makes Idun and her apples incredibly important to the survival of the Asgardian gods. One of the most famous myths involves the trickster god Loki, who is coerced by the giant Thijazi to lure Idun out of Asgard. Thijazi, in the form of an eagle, snatches her and her apples away. Without the apples, the gods immediately begin to grow old and grey, their strength failing. They become frail and withered. Realizing their doom, they force Loki to rescue her. He transforms into a falcon, flies to the giant's fortress, turns Idun into a nut, and flies back with her in his claws, with the giant in hot pursuit. This myth is fascinating because it portrays immortality not as a static, permanent state, but as something that requires constant maintenance and can be lost. Tithonus syndrome. This is a term used in bioethics and gerontology, and it's named after a figure from a deeply tragic Greek myth. Tithonus was a mortal prince who was loved by Eos, the goddess of the dawn. She loved him so much that she asked Zeus to grant him eternal life so they could be together forever. Zeus granted her wish, but Eos, in her haste, made a terrible mistake. She forgot to ask for eternal youth as well. So, Tithonus lived forever, but he also continued to age forever. He grew older and older, becoming increasingly frail, wrinkled, and weak. He shriveled up until he could no longer move, endlessly babbling in his old age, his mind gone. Eos, in pity, eventually turned him into a cicada. The Tithonus syndrome, or Tithonus error, refers to this potential dystopian outcome of modern medicine, a future where we develop technologies that can keep people alive indefinitely, preventing death from organ failure or disease, but without being able to stop the process of aging itself. It's the horrifying prospect of being trapped in a state of extreme old age, frailty, and dementia for decades or even centuries. It's a powerful cautionary tale for the longevity community. Healthspan must come with lifespan. Mahavatar Babaji. Mahavita Babaji is a semi-legendary and highly revered figure in the traditions of Kriya Yoga. He was introduced to the Western world primarily through Paramahansa, Yogananda's famous 1946 book, Autobiography of a Yogi. According to Yogananda and other disciples, Babaji is an immortal Mahavita, or great avatar, who has lived for many centuries, or even millennia, in the Himalayas. He is said to have achieved complete mastery over the physical laws of nature, retaining a youthful appearance and being able to materialize and dematerialize his body at will. He is not a public figure, but is said to work behind the scenes, guiding humanity's spiritual evolution. He is credited with reintroducing the lost science of Kriya Yoga to the world in the 19th century through his disciple Lahiri Mahasaya. Babaji represents a path to immortality that is purely spiritual. It's not achieved through elixirs or technology, but through the highest levels of spiritual realization and enlightenment, where one transcends the limitations of the physical body and achieves union with the divine. For his followers, he is a living embodiment of human potential. Immortality rings. This is a more ambiguous entry that likely points towards the realm of fantasy and esoteric belief rather than established mythology or science. In countless works of fantasy fiction, from video games like The Elder Scrolls and Dungeons and Dragons to various novels, a ring of immortality is a classic magical item. It's a simple, powerful trope, a piece of jewelry that, when worn, halts the aging process or prevents death. It's a coveted artifact that often drives the plot or defines a character. Outside of fiction, the idea can connect to more esoteric or New Age beliefs. Talismans, amulets, and rings charged with specific energies or made from certain materials are sometimes believed to promote health, vitality, and longevity. The symbol of the ring itself, a continuous circle with no beginning or end, is inherently a symbol of eternity and infinity, making it a natural fit for concepts of immortality. Another connection could be to the Ouroboros, the ancient symbol of a snake or dragon eating its own tail, which also represents eternal cycles and rebirth. Ultimately, this entry points to the deeply ingrained cultural association between powerful, symbolic objects and the dream of eternal life. Longevity escape velocity. Longevity escape velocity, sometimes called actuarial escape velocity, is a hypothetical future tipping point that is the ultimate goal for many in the transhuman and longevity communities. The term was popularized by figures like Aubrey de Grey and Ray. It describes a moment in time when, for every year that you stay alive, medical science is able to extend your remaining life expectancy by more than a year. Imagine you have a life expectancy of 85. Next year, you're a year older, but medical advances in that year have increased your life expectancy by, say, 13 months. You've actually gained a month of expected life. If this trend continues and accelerates, you could potentially live indefinitely, always staying one step ahead of the Grim Reaper as technology continuously repairs the damage of aging. Reaching this point would effectively mean the end of aging as a cause of death for those who have access to the necessary therapies. It's an incredibly optimistic and speculative concept, and we are nowhere near it currently. However, it provides a powerful and ambitious target for the field, a future where aging is no longer a degenerative process but a manageable condition. Reverse age in dogs. This entry highlights a very practical and promising area of current longevity research. Scientists are actively trying to extend the lifespan and, more importantly, the health span of our pets, particularly dogs. There are several reasons for this. First, many people love their dogs and want them to live longer, healthier lives, so there's a real market for it. Second, dogs are an excellent model for human aging. They share our environment, which is a huge advantage over lab mice, and they suffer from many of the same age-related diseases, like cancer, arthritis, and cognitive dysfunction. Third, their lifespans are much shorter than ours, which means that clinical trials that would take decades in humans can be completed in just a few years in dogs. Companies like Loyal and the Dog Aging Project at the University of Washington are at the forefront of this. They are testing drugs like rapamycin, an immunosuppressant that has been shown to extend lifespan in mice, on thousands of pet dogs to see if it can delay the onset of age-related conditions. Success in dogs would not only be a huge win for pet owners, but could also significantly accelerate the development of similar therapies for humans. Salamanders are the undisputed champions of regeneration in the vertebrate world, and their abilities are a source of immense fascination for scientists studying longevity and medicine. While a human might be able to regrow the tip of a finger, a salamander can regenerate entire, complex body parts. They can regrow a lost limb bones, muscles, nerves, and skin perfectly, without any scarring. They can regenerate damaged portions of their spinal cord, their heart, and even parts of their brain. This incredible capacity for regeneration means they are highly resistant to many forms of physical damage that would be fatal or permanently disabling for a human. The secret lies in their cells' ability to de-differentiate, reverting to a more stem cell-like state, and then redifferentiating to form all the necessary tissues in the right pattern. Scientists are working to understand the genetic and molecular pathways that control this process. If we could figure out how to safely activate similar latent regenerative pathways in humans, it would be one of the greatest medical breakthroughs in history. It could mean healing spinal cord injuries, repairing hearts after a heart attack, and replacing tissues lost to age or disease, representing a powerful form of functional immortality. Monkey testicles. This entry refers to one of the most bizarre and infamous episodes in the history of anti-aging medicine. In the 1920s and 30s, a Russian-French surgeon named Serge Voronov became world famous for a highly controversial rejuvenation therapy. He believed that the testes were the source of vitality and that aging was caused by their decline. His proposed solution was to graft thin slices of testicle tissue from young, healthy monkeys, usually chimpanzees or baboons, on the testicles of aging human men. He claimed that this procedure would restore a man's vigor, energy, sexual prowess, and youthful appearance. For a time, he was incredibly popular, and thousands of wealthy men, including famous artists and politicians, flocked to his clinic in Paris to undergo the monkey gland treatment. It was a media sensation. However, mainstream medical science was highly skeptical. Eventually, as our understanding of endocrinology and the immune system grew, his work was thoroughly debunked as quackery. The effects were likely a combination of the placebo effect and the body simply absorbing or rejecting the foreign tissue. It now stands as a cautionary tale of medical pseudoscience and the lengths people will go to in the pursuit of youth. Leonard Jones researching this entry takes you down a very specific rabbit hole of American esoteric and occult movements. Leonard Jones, sometimes referred to as the Great Unknown or by the Ascended Master named Godfer, is a figure primarily associated with the I Am activity, a spiritual movement founded by Guy and Edna Ballard in the 1930s. The I Am movement is part of the broader theosophical tradition and teaches the existence of ascended masters, beings who were once human, but have achieved a high level of spiritual enlightenment, transcending the cycles of reincarnation and death. These masters, including figures like Saint Germain, are believed to be immortal and to guide humanity from a higher plane of existence. According to the Ballards, Leonard Jones was a physical manifestation of the Ascended Master Godfer Ray King. The Do Not Research tag often attached to entries like this is there because the information is not found in mainstream historical or scientific sources. It's embedded within the specific lore and teachings of these spiritual groups, making it obscure and unverifiable from an outside perspective. It represents a belief in a very hidden, spiritual form of immortality, accessible only to a select few. Count of Saint Germain. The Count of Saint Germain is one of history's most enigmatic and fascinating figures. A man whose life is a tapestry of fact, rumor, and legend. He was an 18th century European courtier, adventurer, inventor, alchemist, composer, and diplomat. His origins are completely unknown. He burst onto the European high society scene, appearing to be in his mid-40s, and for the next several decades, he seemed not to age a day. He spoke a dozen languages fluently, was an accomplished musician, and claimed to have developed techniques for removing flaws from diamonds and for creating an elixir that could prolong life. He moved effortlessly through the royal courts of Europe, advising kings and nobles. People who had known him decades prior swore he looked exactly the same. This, combined with his mysterious origins and vast knowledge, fueled rumors that he was immortal. The philosopher Voltaire famously and sarcastically called him a man who knows everything and who never dies. He has been linked to various occult societies and is, like Leonard Jones, considered an ascended master in some theosophical traditions. He is the quintessential historical mystery man, whose legend embodies the allure of an eternal, ageless existence. Alright, we are now on to Tier 5. This is where we get into some seriously deep, speculative, and obscure theories and projects. Let's start with Russian Cosmism. Russian Cosmism was a philosophical and cultural movement that emerged in Russia in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. It's a fascinating and unique blend of Eastern Orthodox Christianity, Enlightenment rationality, and a profound faith in the power of science. At its core, Cosmism proposed an incredibly ambitious vision for the future of humanity. Its key thinker, Nikolai Fodorov, advocated for what he called the common task. This task had two main goals. First, to achieve physical immortality and radical life extension through scientific means. And second, even more astonishingly, to achieve the technological resurrection of all humans who have ever lived. Fyodor believed it was humanity's moral and scientific duty to conquer death and to bring back every ancestor from the dead by reassembling their scattered atoms. Once resurrected, humanity would need more space, so the cosmists envisioned the colonization of the entire cosmos. This philosophy had a profound influence on early Soviet-era scientists and thinkers, including Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, one of the founding fathers of rocketry and astronautics. For him, space exploration wasn't just about exploration, it was a necessary step in the cosmist project of eternal life and universal resurrection. It's a wild, incredibly optimistic philosophy. Breathing method. This entry is likely a reference to various esoteric and spiritual traditions that place central importance on the control of breath, or prana, as a key to health, longevity, and even immortality. In many yogic and Hindu traditions, practices known as pranayama are not just simple breathing exercises. They are a sophisticated science for controlling the body's life force energy. It is believed that by mastering the breath, slowing it down, retaining it for long periods, a practitioner can slow down the aging process, purify the body and mind, and ultimately achieve higher states of consciousness. The idea is that a person is allotted a certain number of breaths in their lifetime. So by breathing more slowly and deliberately, you can extend your life. In some advanced, esoteric forms of Kriya Yoga or Taoist internal alchemy, these breathing techniques are said to be part of a process to halt physical decay entirely, leading to a state of suspended animation or physical immortality. While mainstream science would explain the benefits of deep breathing in terms of its effects on the nervous system and stress reduction, these traditions view it as something much more profound, the direct control over the very essence of life itself. Solar breatharians. Breatharianism is the belief that a person can live without food and in some cases without water, subsisting purely on prana life force, or, in the case of solar breatharians, on sunlight. This is an extremely controversial and dangerous belief that is not supported by any scientific evidence. Proponents claim that through intense spiritual practice, meditation, and specific techniques, they can transition their bodies away from physical nourishment. A key figure often associated with this is Hira Ratan Manik, who promotes a practice called sun gazing. The method involves staring directly at the sun during the first hour of sunrise or the last hour of sunset, supposedly allowing the body to absorb energy directly from the sun's rays, which eventually eliminates the need for food. Medical and scientific experts have issued strong warnings against these practices. Staring at the sun can cause severe and permanent eye damage, including solar retinopathy. Furthermore, every documented case of individuals attempting to live without food and water for extended periods has resulted in severe dehydration, starvation, and death. It's a belief system that represents a complete and dangerous rejection of basic biology in the name of spiritual attainment. Well of Zamzam. The Well of Zamzam is a sacred well located within the Masjid Al-Haram in Mecca, Saudi Arabia. It holds a place of profound religious significance in Islam. According to Islamic tradition, the well is a miraculously generated source of water from God, which sprang forth thousands of years ago. The story goes that Abraham's wife, Hagar, and their infant son, Ishmael, were left in the desert and ran out of water. In her desperation, Hagar ran back and forth between two hills searching for help. The infant Ishmael, crying from thirst, scraped the ground with his foot, and water miraculously gushed out at that spot, saving their lives. This became the Well of Zamzam. The water from this well is considered blessed by Muslims. While it's not explicitly an elixir of immortality, it is believed to have healing properties and is revered for its spiritual purity. Millions of pilgrims who perform the Hajj or Umrah pilgrimage drink from the well and often take bottles of its water home. In the context of this iceberg, it represents a form of divine, life-sustaining substance, a sacred water source that is believed to provide spiritual and physical nourishment, tying into the ancient theme of magical, life-giving waters, Telos, and Lemuria. This entry delves into the world of modern, esoteric, and New Age beliefs, rooted in 19th century theosophy. Lemuria was a hypothetical lost continent, proposed by scientists in the 1800s to explain the distribution of lemurs in Africa and Southeast Asia, but later disproven by the theory of plate tectonics. However, the idea of a lost continent was adopted by occultists like Helena Blavatsky, who described Lemuria as the homeland of one of humanity's ancient root races. The belief has since evolved, and now, in many New Age circles, Lemuria is described as a highly advanced spiritual civilization that existed in the Pacific Ocean thousands of years ago. The story goes that before a cataclysm destroyed their continent, the Lemurians used their advanced mastery of energy and crystals to build a network of underground cities. The most important of these cities is said to be Telos, a large, multi-leveled city located deep beneath Mount Shasta in Northern California. The inhabitants of Telos are described as tall, graceful, immortal Lemurians who are living in a utopian society, waiting for the right time to emerge and share their ancient wisdom with surface-dwelling humanity. It's a fascinating modern myth about a hidden, immortal civilization. Relian cloning. The Relian movement is a UFO religion founded in 1974 by a French man named Claude Verelhan, who now calls himself Raoul. The core belief of Raoulsism is that all life on Earth, including humans, was scientifically created in laboratories by an advanced alien species called the Elohim. Raoul claims he was contacted by these aliens, who told him that biblical figures like Jesus and Buddha were also prophets sent by the Elohim. For Raoians, science is their religion, and they see technology as the path to salvation. One of their most central and controversial goals is to achieve immortality through human cloning. They believe that cloning, combined with a process of mind transfer, will allow a person to be recreated in a new body after death, effectively granting them eternal life. In the early 2000s, the Raelians gained massive international media attention when a Reline-affiliated company called Clonaid, led by a Reline bishop named Brigitte Boisselier, claimed to have created the first human clone, a baby girl named Eve. They never provided any proof, and the scientific community widely dismissed the claim as a hoax. But it brought their unique, Sifa-based pursuit of immortality into the global spotlight. Soma was a ritual drink of great importance in ancient Indo-Iranian cultures, particularly in the Vedic traditions of ancient India. It is mentioned frequently in the Rig Veda, one of the oldest sacred texts of Hinduism, which contains many hymns praising its energizing and intoxicating qualities. The drink was prepared by pressing the stalks of a specific plant, the identity of which is one of the greatest mysteries in religious and botanical history. When consumed by priests during rituals, Soma was said to induce a powerful psychoactive, ecstatic state, bringing the drinker closer to the gods and granting them a temporary form of divinity or immortality. It was considered a god itself, the king of plants. Theories about the identity of the original Soma plant are numerous. Some scholars have proposed it was a species of ephedra, a stimulant. Others, like R. Gordon Wasson, famously argued it was the fly agaric mushroom, Amanita muscaria, a powerful hallucinogen. Whatever it was, the original plant appears to have been lost to history, but the concept of Soma remains as a powerful symbol of a sacred, divine plant that could grant mortals a taste of immortality. Mithras cult, the Mithraic mysteries, or the cult of Mithras, was a mysterious Roman religion that was popular among the Roman military from about the 1st to the 4th century AD. It was a mystery religion, meaning its teachings were secret and only revealed to initiates. Because of this secrecy, and because they left behind no written scriptures, almost everything we know about them comes from the ruins of their underground temples, called Mithraea, and the artwork within them. The central image of the cult is always the Tauroctony, the god Mithras born from a rock, slaughtering a sacred bull. It's believed that this act was a creative one, and from the bull's blood and body, all life on earth sprang forth. The rituals of the cult involved a 7-grade initiation system and communal ritual meals, while not explicitly about physical immortality in the way we might think of it. The cult's teachings were focused on salvation and the journey of the soul after death. It's believed that by participating in the mysteries and ascending through the ranks, an initiate's soul could bypass the normal fate of the dead and ascend through the celestial spheres to a divine, immortal existence in the realm of light. Remote viewing afterlife. Remote viewing is a controversial psychic practice that was famously studied by the US government under programs like the Stargate project from the 1970s to the 1990s. The practice involves a person attempting to gather information about a distant or unseen target using only their mind, while the military was interested in its potential for espionage. Some practitioners have turned this supposed ability towards more spiritual questions, specifically attempting to remote view the afterlife. Individuals and organizations like The Farsight Institute claimed to use controlled, remote viewing protocols to explore the nature of consciousness after physical death. Their viewers, often working under blind conditions, produced detailed sessions describing what they perceived to be non-physical realms. The process of dying and interactions with deceased entities. These projects often result in complex and elaborate narratives about soul mechanics, reincarnation, and different spiritual dimensions. For the people who believe in it, this is a form of scientific investigation into what happens after we die, a way to map the geography of the afterlife. For skeptics, it's a classic example of confirmation bias and the human mind's ability to create compelling stories with no verifiable evidence to support the claims. Semaphora. This is a very obscure entry that appears to be connected to the writings of a specific niche New Age author named Sheldon Neidl. Neidl claims to be a contactee for a galactic federation of light, an alliance of benevolent extraterrestrial civilizations. In his extensive and complex lore, the Semaphora is described as a special, immortalizing light body that was a gift to early humans from their Syrian creators. According to his teachings, this Semaphora body was deactivated long ago, resulting in humanity's current mortal state. A central part of Neidl's prophecy is that as humanity approaches a first contact event and a shift in consciousness, this dormant Semaphora will be reactivated. This reactivation will transform our current physical bodies into fully conscious, crystalline light forms, granting us immortality, enhanced psychic abilities, and our rightful place in the galactic community. This concept fits within a specific subgenre of New Age and UFO belief systems that blend sci-fi narratives with spiritual aspirations, envisioning immortality not as something to be achieved through medicine, but as a latent, divine potential within our DNA that will be unlocked by cosmic events and extraterrestrial intervention. It's a very specific and futuristic take on spiritual evolution. Eternal consciousness field. This term doesn't point to a single, well-defined theory, but rather a broad, speculative concept that appears in various forms in philosophy, quantum, mysticism, and New Age thought. The core idea is that individual consciousness is not generated by the brain, but is a localized manifestation of a universal, non-local, and eternal field of consciousness. In this view, the brain acts more like a radio receiver or a filter, tuning in to this universal field and expressing it as an individual personality. When the physical body dies, the receiver is broken, but the underlying consciousness itself does not cease to exist. Instead, it simply rejoins the larger, undifferentiated field. This concept has parallels to ancient philosophical ideas like the Hindu concept of Brahman, the ultimate reality, and the Neoplatonic idea of the One. In more modern contexts, some have tried to link it, often pseudoscientifically, to concepts in quantum physics like entanglement and the holographic principle. It offers a form of immortality where the self as we know it dissolves, but the fundamental essence of our awareness persists as part of a timeless, universal whole. It's a philosophical answer to death, suggesting our consciousness is borrowed, not owned. Agori practices. The Agori are a small and extreme sect of Hindu ascetics, primarily found in India, who are notorious for their unconventional and taboo-breaking ritual practices. They are devotees of the god Shiva in his manifestation as Bhairuva, the destroyer. The Agori deliberately engage in practices that are considered shocking and horrifying by mainstream society as a way to prove their non-duality and detachment from the world. They believe that everything in the universe is a manifestation of God, and therefore nothing can be truly impure or profane. To demonstrate this belief, they live in cremation grounds. cover their bodies in the ash from funeral pyres, and are known to use human skulls as bowls. Most famously and controversially, they are known to engage in ritual cannibalism, consuming parts of human corpses found in the cremation grounds. For the Agori, this is not a savage act, but a profound spiritual practice. By confronting death so directly and consuming what is considered the ultimate taboo, they seek to break down all mental and social conditioning, transcend the fear of death, and realize their own divine immortal nature as one with Shiva. It's a radical and disturbing path to spiritual liberation. Secret societies and immortality rites throughout history. Countless secret societies and esoteric orders have been rumored to possess hidden knowledge related to extending life or achieving immortality. The allure of these groups often comes from the idea that they are the guardians of ancient wisdom passed down through a secret lineage of initiates. The Rosicrucians, a mystical society that first appeared in the early 17th century, were rumored to have knowledge of the elixir of life. The Count of Saint Germain, who we've already covered, was linked to various secret societies and was believed to have achieved his longevity through their teachings. Some interpretations of Freemasonry suggest its allegories and symbols contain hidden alchemical secrets about spiritual transformation and rebirth. These societies often use complex rituals, symbolism, and initiation grades to guide their members on a path of spiritual development. While the outer teachings might focus on morality and fraternity, the inner, more guarded teachings are said to deal with the mysteries of life, death, and the soul's potential for an immortal existence. Whether these rites are purely symbolic or believed to have a real, transformative power, the connection between secrecy and the quest for eternal life is a powerful and recurring theme. Russian brain preservation. This entry likely refers to the modern-day activities of Russian cryonics and transhumanist organizations, which are surprisingly active. Russia has a deep cultural history with these ideas, going back to Russian cosmism. Today, this legacy is carried on by companies like Crieris, which is the first cryonics company established outside of the United States. Crieris offers both whole body and neuropreservation, preserving just the brain services, not only for humans, but also for pets. The Russian transhumanist movement, co-founded by figures like Danila Medvedev, is also a very active intellectual hub, promoting ideas of radical life extension, mind uploading, and the development of AI. What's interesting about the Russian scene is its direct philosophical lineage from a more holistic and almost spiritual view of technological salvation compared to the more libertarian and Project Gilgamesh. Project Gilgamesh is not a single, official project, but a name that has been used for or associated with various concepts and endeavors related to the pursuit of immortality, all invoking the ancient epic. The name itself is powerfully symbolic, referencing the first human story about the fear of death and the quest for eternal life. In some contexts, it has been used to describe the overall scientific and transhumanist endeavor to defeat aging. For example, some futurists have referred to the entire field of longevity research as the Gilgamesh Project. More specifically, there have been fictional and speculative proposals using this name, for instance, in some sci-fi and transhumanist literature. A Project Gilgamesh might refer to a hypothetical, large-scale government or corporate initiative to achieve digital immortality through mind uploading, or to create biologically immortal humans through genetic engineering. The name perfectly captures the ambition, the hubris, and the deeply human motivation behind such a quest. It's a label that immediately conveys the epic scale of trying to conquer the final enemy, death itself. Temporal resurrection. Temporal resurrection is a highly speculative and theoretical concept that blends ideas from physics, computer science, and philosophy. It's a step beyond even the cosmist idea of physically resurrecting the dead. The theory posits that if the universe is fundamentally computational or deterministic, and if a future civilization becomes advanced enough to possess nearly limitless computational power, a Matryoshka brain or omega point computer, they could theoretically run a perfect simulation of the past. By knowing the exact state of the universe at one point in time and the laws of physics, they could calculate every state of the universe that came before it. This would allow them to recreate or resurrect every person who has ever lived as a perfect simulation within their computer. This is sometimes called quantum archaeology. It's the ultimate historical archive, a way to bring back not just the information about a person, but the person themselves as a conscious being within a simulated reality. It's a mind-bogglingly complex idea, bordering on theological, and it relies on numerous unproven assumptions about the nature of reality and consciousness. But for some futurists, it's a logical, if distant, conclusion of technological progress. Corpse medicine, or medicinal cannibalism was a surprisingly common and accepted part of mainstream European medicine from the Renaissance all the way into the 19th century. This wasn't some fringe occult practice. It was prescribed by doctors and used by royalty. The belief was that the human body contained a vital life force, and by consuming parts of a healthy, recently deceased person, you could transfer that vitality to yourself. Different parts were used for different ailments. Powdered human skull, known as mumia, was a common remedy for headaches and epilepsy. Human fat was used to make ointments for muscle pain, and human blood was drunk as a treatment for seizures. The most prized remedies came from the bodies of young men who had died a sudden, violent death, as it was believed their life force was still potent. This practice seems horrifying to us today, but at the time, it was based on the prevailing medical theories. It's a stark reminder that the quest for health and long life has often led humanity down very dark and strange paths, and that the line between medicine and magic has often been blurry. Walt Disney. This is one of the most famous and persistent urban legends of the 20th century. The story goes that after Walt Disney died of lung cancer in 1966, his body was not buried or cremated, but was secretly cryogenically frozen to be reanimated in a future when a cure for his cancer was found. The legend often specifies that his frozen body is stored in a secret chamber underneath the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at Disneyland. This story is completely false. Public records and his own family have repeatedly confirmed that Walt Disney was conventionally cremated a few days after his death, and his ashes are interred at the Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, California. The rumor likely started because Disney was famously a futurist and a technological optimist, and the first human cryopreservation took place just a month after his death, so the timing was perfect. The legend took on a life of its own and became a pop culture fixture, perfectly blending the futuristic promise of cryonics with the magical, secretive world of Disney. It's a complete myth, but it's a myth that refuses to die. Black goo theory. Black goo theory is a fringe conspiracy theory that is complex, sprawling, and deeply strange. It combines elements of ufology, occultism, and speculative science. The core idea is that black goo is a mysterious, intelligent, and often malevolent substance of either extraterrestrial or primordial origin. It is described as a programmable, sentient, nanotechnological fluid that can interact with and alter biological life. Proponents of the theory see evidence of it everywhere. They link it to oil spills, strange geological formations, and esoteric symbolism in pop culture, particularly in films like Prometheus, which features a similar substance. In the context of this iceberg, black goo is often described as a form of demonic or alien immortality. It is said to be able to reanimate dead tissue, create synthetic life forms, or assimilate and control human consciousness, offering a twisted form of eternal life at the cost of one's soul or individuality. It's a paranoid theory that taps into fears about nanotechnology, artificial intelligence, and a hidden, hostile intelligence manipulating world events. It's a modern, high-tech version of a possession or infection myth, with immortality as the corrupted prize. Alright guys, we are at the bottom of the iceberg. Tier 6. These are some of the most abstract, theoretical, and mind-bending concepts on the entire chart. Let's get into it. Immortality virus. The concept of an immortality virus is a recurring trope in science fiction and speculative biology. It's the idea of using a virus, a natural expert at inserting genetic material into host cells, as a delivery mechanism for genes that could halt or reverse the aging process. A theoretical immortality virus would be engineered to carry a payload of specific genes, for example, the gene for telomerase to extend telomeres, genes for enhanced DNA repair, or genes that control cellular regeneration pathways. Once introduced into the body, the virus would infect the person's cells and integrate these longevity-promoting genes into their DNA, effectively reprogramming the entire body for a much longer or even indefinite lifespan. This is a very powerful and elegant concept, but it's also fraught with incredible danger. Viruses can trigger massive immune responses. They can insert genes in the wrong place and cause cancer. And an engineered virus that can be transmitted from person to person could have unforeseen and potentially catastrophic consequences for the entire human population. It's a perfect example of a high-risk, high-reward technology that could either be a panacea or a plague. Anti-entropy rituals. This is a deeply esoteric and philosophical concept that borders on the magical. Entropy is a fundamental concept from the second law of thermodynamics. It states that in an isolated system, the total amount of disorder, or entropy, always increases over time. Things fall apart. Order decays into chaos. The aging and eventual death of a living organism can be seen as a localized example of entropy at work. An anti-entropy ritual, therefore, would be a hypothetical practice or technology that could locally and temporarily reverse or halt this fundamental law of the universe. In a scientific or transhumanist context, this could be a metaphor for the advanced nanotechnologies or energy manipulations that would be required to constantly repair a body at the molecular level, fighting off the decay of entropy. In a more occult or magical context, it refers to a ritual practice so powerful that it defies the physical laws of reality. It would be a rite that could impose a pattern of order onto the chaos, preserving a state of being, like a living body, against the relentless tide of universal decay. It's the ultimate expression of will against the universe, a truly godlike power. Nectome. Nectome was a real startup company that proposed a truly radical and unsettling service. Their goal was to develop a novel brain preservation technique called aldehyde-stabilized cryopreservation. The process was designed to preserve a human brain with such perfect detail that its connectome, the complete map of its neural connections, which is believed to store a person's memories and identity, would be kept intact. The plan was to perfuse the brain with a glutarol dye-based chemical cocktail that would essentially turn it into a solid, stable, glass-like state, ready for long-term storage at cryogenic temperatures. The immense and unavoidable catch was that this process was, by its very nature, 100% of it was designed as a form of high-tech, medically assisted suicide for terminally ill patients, with the hope that their perfectly preserved brain could one day be scanned and uploaded to a computer simulation. The company even won a federal grant for its research and had a waiting list of people willing to pay for the procedure. The ethical controversy was immense, and after significant backlash from the scientific and medical communities, Nectome eventually ceased operations. Hyperstition immortality. This is a very complex and niche philosophical concept. Hyperstition is a term coined by the British philosopher Nick Land and the Cybernetic Culture Research Unit, CCRU. It describes ideas that, once unleashed into the culture, function like viruses and actively work to bring about their own reality. They are fictions that make themselves true. Hyperstitional immortality would be the idea that the concept of immortality itself, if it becomes a sufficiently powerful and widespread belief or goal, could begin to shape reality in a way that makes it possible. It's not just that people believe in immortality and then go build the technology. It's a more active and almost magical process. The idea itself, the hyperstition, begins to reorganize culture, technology, and even reality around its own realization. It's a feedback loop where fiction summons fact. For example, the pervasive science fiction dream of mind uploading could be seen as a hyperstition that is now driving billions of dollars of real-world research into AI and brain-computer interfaces, pulling its own fictional future into existence. It's a very postmodern and almost occult view of how ideas shape the world, suggesting that our collective fictions can have a tangible, world-creating power. Quantum immortality. Quantum immortality is a mind-bending thought experiment that emerges from the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics. The many worlds interpretation posits that every time a quantum measurement occurs, the universe splits into multiple parallel universes, one for each possible outcome. Now, consider a scenario like quantum suicide. A person is hooked up to a gun that is triggered by the decay of a radioactive particle. In any given second, there's a 50% chance the particle decays and the gun fires, and a 50% chance it doesn't. From an outside perspective, you'd quickly see the person die. But from the first-person perspective of the subject, things are different. In every timeline where the gun fires, their consciousness ceases to exist. The only timelines they can possibly continue to experience are the ones where, by pure chance, the particle doesn't decay and they survive. According to the theory, from their own point of view, they will always find themselves in a timeline where they survive, no matter how improbable it seems. They would watch themselves win an eternal game of Russian roulette, seemingly becoming immortal, while a branching trail of dead versions of themselves populates the other universes. It's a deeply weird and unfalsifiable idea. Golden body. The golden body is a concept that appears in various esoteric and spiritual traditions, particularly in Taoist, internal alchemy, and some forms of Buddhism. It represents the ultimate achievement of spiritual practice, the creation of a new, immortal, and incorruptible vehicle for consciousness. It is not about making the current physical body immortal, but about transmuting one's energies to form a new body made of a more refined, celestial substance. In Taoist Needon, this is the immortal fetus or diamond body, which is cultivated within the physical body through years of meditation. breathing exercises, and ethical living. Once fully formed, the practitioner's consciousness can transfer into this new body, allowing them to transcend physical death and travel freely through spiritual realms. It is a body of pure light and energy. Similarly, in some Vajrayana Buddhist traditions, the rainbow body is a state achieved by highly realized masters at the time of death, where their physical body dissolves into pure light, leaving behind only hair and nails. The golden body is a symbol of spiritual attainment, a form of immortality achieved not through technology, but through the complete mastery and transformation of the self. 2045 Initiative. The 2045 Initiative was a non-profit organization founded by a Russian billionaire named Dmitry Itskov in 2011. It laid out an incredibly ambitious public timeline for achieving cybernetic immortality. The project's ultimate goal was to allow a person's consciousness to be transferred to a non-biological carrier, granting them eternal life. The roadmap was divided into 4 stages. Avatar A, to be completed by 2020, was a human-like robot controlled by a brain-computer interface. Avatar B, by 2025, would involve transplanting a human brain into a life support system inside an avatar at the end of a person's life. Avatar C, by 2035, was the goal of creating a computer model of the brain and consciousness and uploading a person's mind into it, freeing them from the biological brain entirely. Finally, Avatar D, by 2045, was the ultimate goal, a hologram-like avatar, a being of pure light and energy, capable of existing in and manipulating the fabric of reality. The initiative held several global future congresses, bringing together scientists, philosophers, and spiritual leaders to discuss this vision. While the ambitious timeline has not been met, the 2045 Initiative was a significant and very public effort to map out a plausible-looking path to digital immortality. Omega Point. The Omega Point is a spiritual and cosmological theory developed by the French Jesuit priest, paleontologist, and philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin. It's a complex and beautiful synthesis of Christian theology and the theory of evolution. Teilhard saw the entire universe as evolving towards a state of greater and greater complexity and consciousness. He believed this process was directional, pulling everything towards a final, ultimate point of unification. He called this final destination the Omega Point. For Teilhard, the Omega Point is the supreme, final state of consciousness for the universe. It is the point at which all individual consciousnesses on Earth, and perhaps across the cosmos, will merge together into a single hyperconscious entity, a kind of collective superconsciousness. He identified this ultimate point of unity with the Christian concept of Christ as the Logos, the unifying force of the universe. In this view, immortality isn't about the preservation of the individual ego, but about the individual consciousness, participating in and contributing to this final, cosmic convergence. It's a form of collective immortality where all of humanity, and indeed all of creation, is unified in a divine, eternal whole. Wow, and that is the Immortality Iceberg. This was a really fun one to make, and it was kind of different, covering everything from hard science to history, myth, and some truly wild philosophical concepts. The human desire to overcome death is just a bottomless well of fascinating stories. As always, thank you all so much for watching. It really does mean the world to me. I'm always blown away by the support and how quickly the channel is growing. If you're still watching this far into the video, please consider subscribing. We are on the road to our next big milestone, and every single one of you helps. Let me know in the comments below which entry you found most interesting, or if there are any other iceberg charts you'd like to see me cover next. Until next time, see you.